Welcome back to another episode of Get in the Cashflow Game with K&K. I'm doing this intro solo today because Kenny has come down with a cold, and a giant with a cold is a really big baby. But we interviewed Michael Roeder of Granite Towers Equity Group on the show, and I actually know Michael from part of a mentorship group that I am a part of, and so Michael's been doing some really great things. He has been in real estate since around 2009. He was doing some single family stuff, and then he partnered up with a good friend of his and also started syndicating. So he's been in over 700 syndication units, probably in the thousands by now. And he's got a wife and 2 kids, and he's honestly just on the track for success. So you will definitely want to listen to this show. And I really just strongly encourage anyone who wants to get into real estate to do something like this, to be part of a group of people who are also interested in investing in the way that you're interested in investing. So for example, if you're looking to syndicate, then be part of a group that has other syndicators. If you want to invest in 1 to 4 units, be part of a group that, invests in 1 to 4 units. So I just really think it's a way to help propel you to the next level, to keep you accountable, to keep you motivated, to keep you kind of hearing all the language, and just to kind of keep you involved and make sure that you're hitting your goals. But do listen to this episode. It is a really good one. There's tons of great tips, and it's also a great way to kind of just learn other people's stories that don't necessarily come from a real estate background. It's not in their family. It's not something that they've been doing their whole life. They got involved after being in another career, oftentimes doing it on the side before they even went full time. So this is going to be a really great show. Tune in and listen. And also, as always, if you like this show, please make sure that you're subscribed, share it with your friends, leave us a review. We like to know what you guys are thinking, if there's anything else that you want us to talk about. And of course, we always love to hear a nice compliment. Thanks so much, and listen in for Mike Roeder. Well, thanks for coming on, Michael. I wanted to ask you, or I guess I wanted to start off by saying we kind of met each other through a group that we're both involved in, the Brad Sumrok group. And so we've kind of started our journey into looking at investing outside of our market. But can you give everyone a little bit of just background on how you even got into syndicating and who you are?
Most definitely. And thank you both for having me on the show today. I really appreciate it. A little background on myself and how I got to where I am today. I started out in the single family rental space. First house that I had bought, I was 19 years old, and my girlfriend and I had purchased that house, and we rented out 3 out of the 4 bedrooms. So we kind of house hacked our first house. Loved the cash flow. We had a bunch of college buddies that were living with us. So a couple of years later, we turned that into a full-blown rental, bought a few more single family rental properties. And at that time, my now business partner, Dan, had been buying some apartment complexes, anywhere in between a duplex up to a 30 unit. And we decided that, hey, let's put our minds together, let's put our money together, and let's buy something together. So we bought a 20 unit in our hometown, central Minnesota. We bought an 8 unit right across the street. And at that time, we had quite a few people asking us how they could get involved. And those assets were doing really, really well. So we were loving it as well. And that's when we started to think about syndications. We started to look for properties, and then we came across the Brad Sumrok group, joined up with that mentorship program down in DFW, and that was back in 2017. So that's when we started syndicating multifamily projects.
Is this full time for you now? Nice. And so everybody, we were talking before we got on here, started recording. We were talking about investing in your backyard. That's where you started. And then we were talking about how, we live in a state, unfortunately, that's not really landlord friendly, and yours has kind of switched. But obviously, I think a lot of people that we deal with a lot of people here, big and small, that just stick to San Diego and stick to their backyard because they know it, they can touch it, they can feel it. And I think it's intimidating to go, I'm going to go to another market and where to go. So I was going to ask you, when you guys started going from your backyard and picking markets, like, how did you even start that conversation, and how do you know where to go?
Yeah, so when we started syndicating projects, we were just looking in Minnesota. Again, going back to what you just said, we wanted to stick close to home. We wanted to be able to drive to the asset. And truthfully, it took us about 9 months. And we still hadn't found our first syndication to put together. And so we got some coaching, got some advice from some really experienced investors. And they said, hey, you need to venture out. You need to have more than just this one market because there wasn't enough deal flow. And when we did that, we landed a project almost instantly. I was in Western Wisconsin, so still fairly close to home. And then after that, we just decided, hey, we need to pick another market and get more deal flow because we weren't underwriting enough projects. So, we took a look at a few different markets, Phoenix, DFW, Indianapolis, Kansas City, and we really honed in on, what market has the right deal flow up for us, what market's landlord friendly, what market has, a lot of job growth and population growth. And Dallas Fort Worth was one of those markets for us. So we really dove into that market.
So in terms of like the process of determining which market you're going into, what does that look like? I mean, are you guys kind of looking at what are top markets and then you just kind of pick a handful and start diving in to see where you're going to focus?
Yeah, we take a look at the top markets. We're also taking a look at the cap rates. Obviously cap rates are pretty compressed these days in most of the top markets, but some markets even more so than others. And with the way that we were underwriting projects, we needed to have a certain cash on cash return. So that was important to us. The size of the market was important to us. And then also the location as well. So Dan, my business partner, lives out on the West Coast. I live in Minnesota. So we really kind of ruled out the East Coast and the southeastern side of the United States because we didn't want to have those, long flight times because we knew we'd be going into these markets quite often.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and so it's basically you and a partner that basically handle all of the asset management. Is that how it works?
So how did you define roles, right? Because you're both like, you go from my money, my deal, I run it all. And how do you, I think for a lot of people, it's like, you need one that's good at raising money, one that's good at this. So how do you guys figure out who's good at what? Like, how did you ultimately pick, who does what?
That's a really good question. And truthfully, we kind of fell into our roles over time, and we still overlap a lot on each other. So, Dan will be doing something. He'll let me know that he's doing a certain task so we don't double team it. But as we kind of progress through our business relationship, we found out that Dan is tremendous with people. He's great at raising money. And so he builds a lot of the relationships with passive investors. He also builds a lot of the relationships with the brokers. I still do that as well, but he's just phenomenal at it. And then on my side, I'm really good at creating systems, making our business as efficient as possible. Financial guy, so I do a lot of the analysis. But again, we overlap on a lot of stuff. So there's not really one specific job that, neither of us do or that both of us do.
I got a question for you. So I think I think for a lot of people, they're in a job, they want to get out of the job, obviously, right? Like we always know cash flow is king. It's the best thing. But you take a leap of faith and you get a partner and he's located here and you're located here. How do you guys ultimately make all this work? Because you're not sitting in a desk next to each other. I know we're not here, but there's Zoom, but really it's like you're raising money, you're buying big assets, you're dealing with being, owners of apartments. It could be a lot of work, some work depending. How did you guys, how does it all work? Like, what are some of the tips and tricks that you have found, to be successful for you guys to have a great working partnership? Because in some partnerships, they just don't work out, as you and I know, and that's a problem too.
It is. And, I feel very fortunate with our business relationship. We've known each other since we were about 16 years old, best friends. So we really knew each other's personalities. We knew that we were both very driven, very motivated. And I think that's probably one of the most important pieces is just whoever you get into business with, make sure that they're motivated and that they're going to be working without you, hassling them day and night, saying, hey, come on, we got to step it up here. So that's very important. And, I would say be very, very open. So if there's ever an issue with that business relationship, call up that person or your business partner and say, hey, this is why I'm frustrated. How can we come to a resolution here? How can we fix this? I think a lot of people out there, they might not bring that to their business partner's attention. And that's where you get into issues, because it starts to snowball. Maybe that other person doesn't think there's an issue. And if you communicated that with them, you might be able to solve that issue. So
couldn't agree more. I think communication is important in any kind of relationship, whether it's business or personal or whatever. So that's, a very good tip.
I kind of was saying, I say this saying like to kind of move on to another topic, but I always say, cash was king, right? Everybody say cash is king. And I say, you know what? I don't think cash is king anymore. I think if you can find a deal, that's king. You're the king of the mountain if you have a deal, if you locked up a deal. There's so much money now. It's like I hear now, we have tons of money, we can't find a deal. It's not like we have, it's not that you need cash. So how are you guys, when we talked, you're selling a bunch of properties right now. That means you have to exchange in other properties. Normally in a normal world, normal market, it's pretty not easy, but it's streamlined. Now it's becoming more complicated because you sell a building, you got to identify one, and you don't want to just buy a deal to buy a deal. Like, how is that dealing with that stress? Because you're not selling one asset, you're selling 5 assets right now?
Correct. Yeah. So we are selling 5 assets right now. 3 are under contract and we'll close within the next month. So yeah, like you said, we're in that situation where we need to find another asset, before the end of the year, to dump these funds into. And, it can be tough to find assets in today's environment. However, if you have the right relationships and you're set up in the right markets, you can be very confident in your ability to find an asset. Like right now, I have, I'm 100% certain that we will find another asset before year's end that'll close before December 31st this year. So, I really don't have a concern. But again, that goes back to how much legwork have you put in over the last year or 2 years or 3 years? And if you put in that legwork, you should be able to find an asset, but you also have to put in the time. We put in a lot of time and effort on underwriting deals and having our team underwrite our deals to be able to actually find that needle in a haystack.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I have seen over the years, and part of the reason why even we've looking at syndication is too, when you talk about deal flow, especially, you've been calling brokers for who knows how many, for several years now, building relationships, but you've also been more active than the average person who can only buy it, who's only buying themselves, and they have a limited amount of funds. So people like you are getting more access to deals and also probably getting pushed to the front of the line on deals more so than someone who buys a property once every couple years or 5 years or whatever, and they're in and out of the business, and so they're not maintaining those relationships.
I couldn't agree more. Quick story, we had an asset earlier this year that we purchased, 264 units out in Tyler, Texas, from a broker. And we have another deal under contract, totally off market, from that same broker in that same market. And they actually just pitched us another deal right across the street, totally off market. So like you said, the more active you are and the more that you stay in front of these brokers, the more opportunities that are going to present themselves to you.
So I think the challenging thing is, getting the deal and then having the deal make sense, right? Because it's Krystle and I, because we have traveled around and looked at deals ourselves, whether it was like Texas or Florida. We spent time like boots on the ground, drive it, learn about it. And then, you realize you're like, okay, like cap rates are definitely compressed in a lot of markets. Like, maybe 5 years ago, things were a little bit more upside here, upside there. But then you come back home, you're like, wow, cap rates are really tight. It's not just a deal flow, but then it's like you get a deal, but does it work? How are you guys navigating through that? Because I feel like that's even more challenging because, it's one thing to find a deal. It's another thing. Does that deal going to make sense for your exchange, for your investors, and for you ultimately where you got to return money to in capital?
Right. And cash flow is extremely important. I mean, obviously, the higher the cash flow, the lower the risk in most circumstances. So, one thing that we have pivoted on over the last year is just switching from agency loans, where you're doing a deal with Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, to bridge loans where you're able to get the higher leverage. You're able to leverage, the rehab budget as well. And that allows your returns to go up a little bit. So that's one thing that we've had to do. And, I was talking to a lender the other day and they said, this year, 2021, about 80 to 85% of their business was bridge loans. Whereas, a couple of years back, it was the exact opposite. 85% was, Fannie and Freddie debt. So that's one thing that we've pivoted on. We've also went out to, some secondary markets. So, looking at DFW, a lot of times we're not landing the assets right in, Dallas or Fort Worth. Maybe it's 30 minutes or 45 minutes outside of the downtown metro. And sometimes that can give you a little bit higher, cap rate on the buy-in, a little bit higher cash on cash. So we've found, those secondary markets to be more appealing to us, and we've been able to land more projects in those markets.
Yeah, I was going to say too, I mean, just because of the competitiveness, like, for example, here in San Diego, our market is what we would call competitive, for sure. And we're not landlord friendly either. So most out-of-state people don't even want to have anything to do with investing in California. So we're literally competing with a lot more locals here. And let's say that a very competitive deal might have, 7 or 8 offers, and that's competitive. But in DFW, or some of these areas that are known to be landlord friendly and business friendly, you're dealing with people coming from New York, California, like all over the map, Minnesota, to buy deals. And I'm hearing maybe 25, 30 offers and maybe even more on certain deals. So outside of your relationships with the brokers, what do you think is also giving you the competitive edge in winning deals, especially when you're going into a new market?
You bet. So, and you're right, Krystle, we're seeing about 15 to 20 offers on most of the projects that we're bidding on in DFW and Nashville. So it's very, very competitive. I think you have to pick and choose what assets you're really focusing your time on and spending the time and effort on, because, if you're not going to be that competitive on price, you're probably not going to be in there. You want to make sure that you're going to be able to get above and beyond what their whisper price is, because what we're seeing is, usually the assets are trading for 5 to 10% above the whisper in these hot markets. Now, there are some brokers that list, very high, and you start to begin to know that. So, you can underwrite to that. But I would say, other than the relationship with the brokers, which is extremely crucial, obviously build up that relationship as best as possible. But the terms are very, very important. And after, we're going through 5 sales right now, and we had a buyer fall through. And so we're really noticing firsthand how crucial it is to select a buyer that's going to follow through and close on the asset and not, pull out, a month or 2 down the line. So if you can, increase, the terms that you're portraying in your LOI, that's going to set you apart as well. Say someone's putting $150,000 hard day one, and you're able to put $400,000 or $500,000 hard day one. That's going to show that you're extremely serious. And even if you're new in that market, that's going to carry some weight. Same with your due diligence period. If you have a financing contingency, maybe removing that. So there's different ways that you can go about it. You can also play to the seller's emotions as well. If you can find out why they're selling that property and what's important to them, that can really help the cause as well.
So I was going to ask you about your strategies, because obviously, like you mentioned, it's funny, even here in San Diego, I mean, Krystle's been doing commercial financing, for 17 years. And I would even say it's kind of rare you start going, oh, we should look at bridge loans, because, here there's assets you can buy too, but they're so under rented because, somebody has it free and clear. They don't really care. They get the cash flow and they just have no intention to raise the rents. And if they do, it's just minimal. But for you guys, you're buying this big asset. You're in a market that's more landlord friendly. What is this? Is the strategy, buy it, get the bridge, and then how long is it typically taking you to get the rents up, and what are you doing to get the rents up? Is it kicking them out? Is it just improve the property on the outside and push it up? Like, what is your strategy in today's market?
Yep. So our strategy is typically to come in and, boost the rents to pro forma over a 12 to 18 month period. And it really depends on the asset. But that's typically our strategy. Now, we don't kick the tenants out. We'll give them the option. So, say their rent is at $1,000 and our pro forma rent's at $1,150. We'll bump their pro forma rent up, likely to that 1150 when their renewal comes up. But we'll give them the option to either do a partial upgrade inside their unit if they still have a classic unit, where maybe we're just replacing the appliances or putting in some light fixtures, something simple where you don't have to have them move everything out. Or if you have a vacant unit that's not rented it yet, you could renovate that unit and allow them to switch units to that, fully upgraded unit. So that way everyone feels like they're winning. It's a win-win situation.
And then how are you guys in the market you're in? I mean, obviously I think, since the pandemic, it's funny. I think the pandemic first hit, and I listened to sometime, I'm drawing a blank, the guy that works, Greg, the economist, the multifamily economist. You remember his name, Greg? What's the big,
He's always with RealPage, right?
Yeah, RealPage. Yeah, I'm talking, it's right. But he came out, pandemic hit, he's like worried about, we're going to get rent growth and this, and all of a sudden, it went from, is anybody going to pay? We're all going to get screwed, to, okay, it's not as bad, and I don't think we're going to see rent growth. And all of a sudden, we're all like, wait a minute, there's going to be some serious rent growth here. It's funny how you look back, and we always look back, and it was panic, and then it was, okay, let's calm down. Then it was, okay, the first month wasn't bad. The second month, we got rent collections, and now we're not sure about rent growth. You shouldn't be raising rents. All of a sudden is, oh my gosh, everybody's raising rents now. And I mean, are you seeing that across the board in all markets that you're entering and you own?
Yeah, good question. So not all markets, but most of the markets. So, Dallas, Fort Worth, definitely. Tennessee, Minnesota, yes. And, we're actually involved in a secondary market in Texas. And I was just looking at the CoStar report today. And this year alone, they were projecting a 21% rent increase.
Whoa.
Unbelievable.
Oh my God.
I think 12%. And even that's phenomenal. I mean, if you can hit a 3-4% per year, typically that's a great number. So yeah, we're seeing some tremendous, rent increases. Now, we do have an asset in an oil market, and that's been hit very hard, because of COVID and what's happened over the last, year and a half. So that one, we are not seeing the rent increases like Dallas, Fort Worth, and some of the other hot markets. So, and I think that, it depends city to city. You go to some of the coastal cities and you might not be experiencing that, and same with oil markets.
So I want to ask you what you have to say about the two kind of most common rebuttals I get from people who, just prefer to invest in their own backyard, especially in a non-landlord friendly state like ours. And now Minnesota's kind of going that direction for you. So the two most common things that I hear is one, I have a friend that sold his stuff here in San Diego, and he bought an apartment building in Texas, and it's the exact same cap rate. So like maybe he sold an 8-unit building in San Diego to buy a 16-unit building in Texas. But the cap rate's still the same. So he's not getting any better return. Then the second argument that I hear is, yeah, I get that all these people are investing in Texas. It's such a great example because it's such a hot market. But I don't really feel comfortable because when you go over to Texas, like for example, in California, they're not making any more land. Like everything's built up. You can't build anywhere. If you go to Texas, you look around and there's just land everywhere. And that makes me nervous because, when things go down, it's obviously not as desirable of a place to be as maybe like a Southern California. So what do you have to say about those two common kind of misconceptions or complaints?
You bet. So the cap rate, truthfully, we don't pay a ton of attention to our going in cap rate, what we're purchasing at, because we're adding value. We're sticking a lot of dollars into the assets and we're driving the NOI up. So it's driving the value up. So, even if you're trading a property in California, it's at one cap rate, and you're buying in Texas and it's at the exact same cap rate. Well, if you're buying all cash and you're not really doing anything to the property, yeah, then maybe that doesn't make sense. But if you can find a nice value add project where you can boost the income, you'll see your returns go up. So you want to pay attention to a lot more than just the cap rate. Pay attention to the rent growth, pay attention to the vacancy rate, pay attention to, what you're capped at for increasing the rents if you have rent control in the state. Pay attention to the expenses and how expensive it is to do your CapEx project. So there's just a lot that goes into it. So again, just don't just pay attention to the cap rate. Now, as far as the land goes in Texas, I think that's something to take into consideration, but you also want to consider how many people are moving to the state or to the city that you're investing in. And a great way to take a look at that is if you go to U-Haul's website, you can see a map of, how many one-way U-Hauls are going to certain cities. And that'll really tell you a lot about the city that you're investing in. And if you can see a trend over time where it's happened for the last 3, 5, 10 years, then you can get pretty comfortable that that's going to continue happening. And in a city like Dallas-Fort Worth, yes, there's a lot of land, but there's also a significant amount of demand. And then one other thing to look into is the supply. How many units are coming online over the next couple of years, and make sure to take that into consideration as well when you're underwriting.
I love that because so we had another a guy on, Logan Matashami, and I love him. He calls himself like a data nerd. So
he's like and he's an editor or chief something to
Housing Wire.
Housing Wire. Yeah. Super funny guy. Super cool.
He's
you have to look him up.
Yeah, so he writes regularly there. But and it's kind of funny because he calls people like this trolls, which is probably not a popular opinion. But it's basically like people who make these like very general statements and consider it the law. So things like, yeah, they're not making any more land. Like it sounds very catchy and very good. And you go, oh, wow, that's right. But it's not backed up by any data. So I love that your answer is to check the data of, how many people are moving into a city and, check, maybe how many jobs are coming into the city and these kinds of things, because this is all, so what you're saying is that you make decisions based on data and not based on these like very general statements that sound great, but aren't backed up by data.
Exactly. And I mean, if you're searching for something to support your decision, if you have a certain opinion, I mean, you can find data to go either way. But just, make sure that you're drilling up enough reliable data and, maybe talking to some investors that are already involved in that market and see how things are going, see what they like, see what they don't like. And I think you can make a really good educated decision by doing those two things.
Yeah. And the one other thing you did mention, it's like you think about it, but how much is it, what do you got to do to a unit in San Diego or wherever, or what do you got to do unit in Texas? What is the cost? And what, you're putting in X and you're getting a return of X, and you're putting in X, you're getting a return of X. So that's the thing is there is a cost because, it could be more expensive to do things here than over there because obviously the cost of labor, materials, whatever. I mean, our gas here is always $1 higher minimum than everybody else because we have a gas tax, So that's, I don't think about that, but you have to too, because it could be a lot more money just if we did the same unit turn just because of labor.
I'm already noticing that, like when I'm in the Sumrok group and I see people making their estimates of like their unit renovations.
We're like, wow.
I'm like, what can you do with $7,000 in one unit? And that's like a big job. Here we're like 25 grand, that's a unit, that's a rehab.
It could be, yeah. I mean, but you might be even less, but I mean, $7,000's light, 15's more normal, and 25's both 7. We're like, wow. And you're like, you do this and that. So I think it comes to supply and labor. And I mean, it's funny, Krystle and I, we were in Miami for a month and we drove around. And so when I go into cities now, I look and I go, what's the minimum wage? We're in Texas. And I was like, we're in Miami, and literally I know it's September 1st, but I'm thinking about is their minimum wage is $8.65 in Florida, and it's going to go to $10, and every year it's going to go up $1. And I was telling Krystle, COVID did a couple things. The pandemic, it's number one is, probably not building, things stalled, things are now lagging, which is good for us, not good for the normal person, but also wages are going up. But wages going up when you own property is like gold falling from the sky. And I don't, it's funny when you look back and you go, how is this all going to turn out? Forget the lockdowns and all that. From a business standpoint, how is this going to turn out for our industry? Now we're September, in 2021, you look back, you're like, this has turned out pretty damn good. I mean, how many units, I was going to ask you, how many units do you own? And out of that, what was your lost rents probably? And how did that turn out? I know you're a couple of markets because I was just curious. And also is where you're going into, you guys are seeing massive wage increase too, I'm guessing as well, right?
Right, exactly. And we have about 1,600 units, assets under management right now. And, I would say, about 2 to 3% increase in delinquencies, across a decent chunk of our assets, but that was pretty short term. And a lot of, those delinquencies have been taken care of through state assistance. Now, the state assistance has been very slow, especially in some markets. So it drags on and drags on because they have such an influx of applications, for that assistance. But, overall, multifamily in general has done tremendous over the last year and a half. And especially when you compare it to other asset classes, you look at retail when COVID hit, you look at hospitality, commercial. I mean, a lot of those got hit very hard, whereas, multifamily really, stood the weather very well. So.
Yeah, I mean, we're even here in California, I mean, probably there too, we're driving around and all of a sudden you're like, wow, that's, we're in Mission Valley here, which is lot of businesses, a lot of people moving around. This is like kind of the central spot, one of them. And, there's a strip mall over here, which is full. And then you're looking like they just lost like 2 or 3 big tenants. And you're kind of like, ouch. And then you go, we have a mall over here. It's Westfield, which put a lot of money into all these malls. They made them $1 billion, this mall, $1 billion here, there. And we're in there and like, they're just tenants never came to the space or they left. And you see these and you're like, they just did a massive build out for the Equinox gym. This whole thing was there. They were signed up, pandemic came, they just bailed out of their lease. Huge. It's sitting there. And I'm like telling Krystle, like, you don't even know how that's going to look, but that's crazy. I mean, how is that going to recover?
Exactly. I mean, that impacts the bottom line significantly when you're a landlord of one of those assets. So, again, that's one of the reasons why I love multifamily is you're just spreading the risk amongst many, many units. If you can get 100 or 200 unit property, if your vacancy goes up a little bit, you might have a couple extra vacant units, but you're still doing well. You're still able to pay your mortgage, hopefully distribute, some good cash on cash returns still to your investors. And, it just makes sense.
One of the other things that I learned too, because we had a property management company, is that even when, let's say you had to evict a tenant in one of your apartment buildings, like I can call my eviction attorney and get, ask a question, and I'm not going to get a bill, for 15 minutes of their time. I can kind of get the advice, and then you kind of have like pretty standard costs for evictions and things. If you have an issue with a tenant in a commercial space, you are dealing with a whole different ball game. It's like exactly what you would expect from an attorney. Big retainer, charging for every 15 minutes, every email sent, every copy of they made or letter they sent out, like all this kind of stuff. So you're really playing on a different field when you're dealing with commercial. It's much more sophisticated, which just means it's a lot more expensive. So what do you say to like somebody who's looking to potentially invest with you guys, or who's maybe thinking they don't have the time to do all this? They don't want to deal with all these tenants. They don't want to find deals. They want to do all that. What kinds of things should they be looking for when they're looking at investing their money with a syndicator?
Yeah, there's a few different things that passive investors should be looking for. I mean, first and foremost, you have to know, like, and trust the general partners. So whoever's on the general partnership team, make sure that you feel very comfortable in their ability. The other thing that you want to take a look at is the team that they're employing to, do the third party management, to do the CPA or the tax work, to do the legal work. The contractors, you want to make sure that the full team has been vetted and that they're going to do a solid job as well. And I would say the most important piece of that team, other than the asset management, is that third party manager. So if that team has experience with them, or if they can show you why they trust them, that's going to be huge as well. Number 3, the market. You want to make sure that the market that you're investing in, you feel comfortable with, and that it basically has some potential and is really mitigating risk. So I think those 3 items are very, very important. And if anybody has any questions on that, I actually wrote an ebook. It's called The 5 Steps to Successful Passive Investing. So if you go to our website, you can download that for free as well.
Very cool.
That's awesome. That's cool.
I love to cover that, because it's amazing to me how many people don't know that passive investing is even an option. And then even when they do find out that it's an option, they don't know where to start. So it's kind of one of those things I tell people, if you feel like you're too busy, I mean, you can easily passively invest and still at least start making a return on your money.
Exactly. You certainly can. And there's quite a few syndicators out there that are putting together really good deals, and you might not have access to them, but if you start, asking around and talking to some real estate investors, I think you can drum up some really good referrals. And that's probably one of the best ways to go about investing, is just, finding someone that's invested, or that, one of your friends or family members or colleagues has invested with before, and they have some experience with that general partner. That's going to show you a lot right there as well.
And what would you say for, somebody that's just, it's your friend, it's somebody calls you and says, hey, Michael, I know you in all these units. I'm thinking about buying a 4-unit, multifamily. I've never owned any property. What is the advice you're going to give to that, when you were first getting started, that first time buyer, whether it's in Minnesota or Texas or anywhere?
Yeah, first and foremost, get educated. So I'll typically give some people some book recommendations, podcast recommendations, and if you can listen to some good content, at least for a couple of months, and get yourself used to all the terminology and the markets and what people are doing and what they're not doing, or what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. I think that's going to help out a ton. Now, if you are looking to, bring on other people's money and syndicate projects, I would personally highly recommend either partnering up with someone that's done, 5, 6, 7 assets or acquisitions, or finding a mentor, that has done many, many projects that you can kind of rely on and lean on, while you're going about that avenue.
And what do you think in the next, year or two, what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge in this industry? And what do you think is going to be the biggest gains or wins in this industry? What do you see?
Yeah. So biggest challenge, I think, right now our challenge is finding the personnel. So finding qualified on-site managers to manage the property, finding contractors to get the CapEx projects done. There are a lot of jobs out there. I heard a stat the other day that there's more job postings than people looking for jobs. So, right there, it's a little bit of an issue. So I think that's going to continue to be an issue over the next year or two. Wins, I think the rent growth is going to be phenomenal over the next few years, with, like you were saying, with wages going up, with all the money that's been printed by the Fed. You're going to see a lot of inflation. And when you have inflation, typically, hard, tangible assets like multifamily real estate are going to do pretty dang well. So I see that being a huge, huge plus for multifamily real estate. One of the other negatives, possibly eviction moratoriums. Again, they can impose that. The government can pretty quickly. Now, if you can screen your tenants properly, invest in the right markets, maybe buy a little bit nicer assets, a lot of times you can alleviate, having to go through the eviction process. So there's things that you can do to really get around that.
Yeah, I think a lot of somebody's mentioned the other day, I think a lot of mom and pop people that, maybe didn't pull the background report, didn't really look at income, didn't dive, didn't do the deep dive because it's like they're just lazy. I think they're now going, okay, I need to make sure I pay attention because, they might be the ones, because, you hear about these people like, I have a friend and the tenants aren't paying rent. And I'm like, that's kind of unusual. And I'm like, half this building, I'm like, is he managing? Yeah. I'm like, did he screen? He goes, well, I don't know. I go, that sounds like a screening issue because it's very rare you hear like 30, 40% of your tenants are paying. I'm like, it sounds like they either got together or you just, this one guy referred all of his friends into my building. It's been great until they all got together and said, we're not going to pay rent, So
you got to put in the effort and, the screening up front. That's extremely important. Otherwise you're going to have a lot of headaches in the back end.
I always say you got to treat it like a business because that's what it is.
Yeah. I always tell people, they call, I go, what's the advice? I said, well, I'm going to tell you something. It's probably going to insult you. Okay. If you're willing to rent to your grandma, mom, and you're not willing to evict them, then don't rent to them. They're like, what? I said, I know that doesn't make sense now, but when you've owned as much stuff, you'll get it. Cause you'll be like, I was talking to a lady. I remember I referred you at the lady, they had to evict their son out of a rental property. It took 1.5 years. Like, who does that? But she learned. She's like, you just never know.
And it's, going back to renting to family and friends. I mean, do you really want to tarnish that relationship? I would say it's probably worthwhile going the other route and finding someone that's not related if you can.
It's been a hard no for us. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and kind of wrapping up, I was listening to Grant Cardone, whether you like him or not. He said something, and it's obviously it's their top of mind, but he said, a lot of money in the last about 5 years ago or so has entered into the space, the real estate space. And he put it where money wants to get a return, wants that cash flow, and it's moved into multifamily, and I don't think it's just US. I think people globally have watched because of guys like Grant Cardone and podcasts, and these things go viral. They look and they go, wait a minute, how does this work? And they've looked from the tax standpoint, the cash flow, the appreciation, the cash out refis, the repositioning, the 1031s. And so I think more than ever, there's so much money in this multifamily space. I mean, Texas market is if you think, I tell people, it's the king of multifamily deals, right? I mean, do you see that too, as just like the money pouring into the space? Like, I just feel like it's not going to stop because there's so many great aspects to this business.
Exactly. And that's what I'm seeing as well. And what I think will continue to happen is you'll see more and more money funneling into this space. We've seen it already. I mean, we're competing with REITs, we're competing with life insurance companies outside the US, foreign investors. I mean, you name it. And, again, back to what you said, I mean, there's just so many different benefits that multifamily offers to investors that, there's just a lot of people flooding towards it. And what happens when you have all these funds coming into the space is the cap rates compress. And obviously that helps, drive your pricing up. So it's a benefit to us. Yeah, it might be a little bit tough on the buy side when you're seeing cap rates compress, especially if you've been in the game for, 10, 15 years. You remember the price per door being, 20, 30K per unit. And now it's 110K a unit. Sometimes it's tough to get past that mind block, but you just got to look at the fundamentals. You got to look at how the property underwrites, conservatively. And, if the returns look reasonable, then go ahead and jump in and make an offer on the property.
What's next for you guys? What's ahead in the next, to finish out the year next year? Just selling and buying just focusing on the sell and buys?
Yeah, exactly. We focus on doing about 4 to 6 assets per year in that $15 to $35 million range. And one thing that we've been really focused on is building out our team. So that way we can continue to progress with that amount of properties per year. So this year, over the last 12 months, we hired on a full-time CFO. We have a full-time assistant, a real estate analyst, and then we're going to be bringing on a full-time asset manager. So just making sure that we're going at the right pace.
Well, it sounds like you're doing all the right things because that's all positive growth.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, same back to you guys. You guys are doing phenomenal.
Thank you.
Yeah. So congrats on your success. So before our last question, where is the best place people can find you, learn more about you? Maybe they want to grab your ebook, which sounds awesome. And,
listen to your podcast.
Yeah. Listen to your podcast. Give us the best place to go to find all that information about you.
Definitely. So you can reach us through our website, which is Granite Towers Equity Group.com. And there's a few tabs on there. There's the ebook that you can download. There's our podcast that'll show all our podcasts that we've launched. And then we have our contact us page. And then, of course, if you want to email me directly, my email is mike@granitetowersequitygroup.com. And thanks again, you two, for having me on. I really appreciate it. What a fun show.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So our final question we ask everybody is, what is your definition of generational wealth?
Definition of generational wealth to me would be where you can pass it on generation to generation for, I would say at least 5 generations. And that's something that we're trying to teach our children, how to keep the wealth that we pass down to them. And, as far as a dollar amount, I don't have a specific dollar amount, but, I think if you can pass on, maybe $20 million or so, I mean, that would definitely be generational wealth to me.
And then when you teach your kids about, because we have this conversation a lot, is this guy, Bobby Castro, if you ever heard of him, he was talking about, his thing is he's he gets consulted by billionaires. They said the biggest thing is it's not the next generation, it's the next generation that basically spends it all. And so you're really trying to not educate this one, but you got to educate this one to the next one to that one, because I think by generation 2 or 3, it's like could be gone. So what do you kind of focus on, and what would you recommend for somebody that's passing on these assets? Like, what do you think is important for a family to know and pass on to their kids?
Yeah. So first off, I would say, integrate your children when they're young. We have a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, both daughters. We've already set them up with a candy machine business. So they're helping out with that business. It's their little joint venture. And, we've started to integrate our 9-year-old into our apartment business or multifamily business as well, where she's learning the lingo. She's going to the properties with us every once in a while, and it starts to drum up that interest. And I think if you can continuously do that, involve them in what you're doing and show them how it can be fun. I mean, obviously there's certain aspects that aren't fun, but if you can really bring out that fun in some of the items that you teach them, it's going to really increase their interest in what you're doing. And I think as they get older, as they get into the teenage years or, low 20s, I think just talking about teaching their children when they do have children and how to do that, that's really going to help, keep that generational wealth and teach their children when they grow up.
That's awesome. I like that. I like you got them a little business. That's cool. We have 2 girls too, so they're not that they're young, but I like that. It's a good idea.
Getting all the tips we can.
Well, Michael, thanks so much for coming on. Again, congrats on all your success. I just love when people, jump in and learn something. I know it's a lot of hard work. What you guys do, it's not easy. It's a grind, but I mean, you're going to look back in 5-10 years and you'll be in such a good position, just cash flow wise, equity wise, all that. And then plus you can pass it on to the next generation.
Well, thanks again. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Awesome.
All right.